Should a man pay all the bills in a long-term relationship? Or is that the fastest way to get taken for granted? Today, I'm laying it all out without the fairy tales.
We're going live, baby.
We'll do it live.
You're listening to the premier podcast for men who want to not only be better with women, but want to be better men in general. This is the Come On Man podcast. And here's your host,
Paul Bauer.
Paul Bauer.
Paul Bauer.
Paul Bauer.
Paul Bauer.
Paul Bauer.
Paul Bauer. He is a certified master life coach and NLP practitioner.
True. It's all true. What's good, guys? I hope you had a good weekend. I had a guy comment on one of my videos last week saying I needed to do a video on this. Should men pay all the bills in a long-term relationship? Well, I suppose it comes down to what you want, doesn't it? Do you want to attempt the TradCon lifestyle? Or do you want to operate in reality? we're going to get into it today. But before we do, if you are new to the channel, my name is Paul Bauer, and I help men level up and get better with women. And the funny thing about doing that is it tends to make us better men in all areas of our lives. Now, before we get into it, let me tell you why I don't like telling men what they should or shouldn't do. Now, this is something I didn't quite realize until I read one of the required reading in the Married Red Pill. If you ever go to the Married Red Pill subreddit, there's what they call the sidebar, and there's mandatory reading. Okay, if you are going to claim to be Red Pill at all, you need to read these books. And one of those books is called When I Say No, I Feel Guilty. And one of the first things that he talks about in the book is the concept of what you should or shouldn't do. Now, a lot of people will say you should do this based on their personal values. But what if that doesn't match your personal values? Then should you do that? And really, if you break it down, the word should is a form of manipulation. It's you need to do this because I say that's the moral thing to do or whatever. It's the right thing to do. It's the traditional thing to do. But you have a right to say no and do what's best for you. So should you or shouldn't you do this? It really comes down to what's best for you. Okay. So I'm not going to tell you that, but you do have some options here. Okay. Do you want, you have traditional choice versus traditional trade-offs. Okay. If you want a stay-at-home wife, you're choosing full financial responsibility. Okay. If that's you, you're like, nope, I want my wife in the house. I want her taking care of the household. I want her taking care of the kids. Okay. That's a lifestyle call, right? It's not necessarily a moral one. Now you could say, the Bible says this, or the Torah says this, or the Quran says, whatever your religious, background is, and why you need to have your wife stay at home. Okay. That could be one of your personal, choices, one of your personal values that you want to instill in a relationship. All right, fine. Okay. So whether you should or shouldn't is irrelevant then, because you want her to stay at home and not work. So someone's got to pay the bills. So that leaves it up to you, right? Okay. Well, that settles that. If that's not your personal value, then should you do it? Well, I guess it's up to you then, right? Guys, before we get too far into it, do like, subscribe, hit those notifications. I do have new episodes every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday if you are new to the channel. But listen, there's a divorce filing reality that we all have to understand when we're considering whether we should or shouldn't be paying all the bills. Okay. You have to understand that women initiate the majority of divorces. Okay. Vast majority of divorces, they're something like 70 to 80%, depending on your economic status, I guess. but either way, women are filing for a majority of divorces. Okay. And if she's been out of the workforce for years, courts often compensate for lost earning power. Okay. So her attorney is going to argue that she doesn't have experience for the last 20 years. She's rusty. People aren't going to want to hire her. So therefore, she's entitled to higher alimony levels. Okay. And in a lot of states, it's done by a formula. It certainly is here in Colorado. It's done by a formula. Okay. Now, this is what my ex-wife did. Okay. My ex-wife went to college. She had a degree and she had experience working in the nonprofit sector, and she made fairly decent money. Right. But she wanted to be a stay-at-home mom so bad, and that necessarily wasn't one of my values, but she wanted it so bad that she was really pushing for it. And I was like, all right, fine, fine. I guess I'm making enough money now. But this is where this kind of behavior, and then also other guys that I've talked to in the space and coached in the space, like, has formulated my viewpoint that most women out there these days don't want to be stay-at-home moms. They don't want to be housewives. They just want early retirement. Okay. They are not there to do a good job in the household. In fact, they're going to sit there and say, my job's so hard and it's the hardest job on the planet. What did Oprah say? Being a mother is the hardest job on the planet. And Bill Burr has a whole bit about how it's basically they're living the dream life, right? And I just saw James Sexton, the world's greatest family court attorney, talking about this. And he goes, when he deposes these single mothers in court, he often asks them, like, what's your day like? Right? What do you do? And they're like, well, I take the kids to school. And he goes, oh, so you physically put them in the car and drive them to school? Well, no, I walk them to the bus stop. Oh, okay. Well, what do you do after the bus stop? Well, I do all sorts of things. Well, give me a typical day. Oh, well, I come home and do laundry. So you do that every day? You're actually in there like scrubbing on a washboard? Like, no, I throw it in the wash machine. And okay, well, then what do you do with your day? Right? And you do this every day? Well, not every day. I do it like every other day or something, right? So it's complete nonsense that they're doing all this work. They just want early retirement. Okay. So now there are good women out there, don't get me wrong, but most of the women out there that are lobbying for this is what they're doing. Okay. And then when she filed for divorce, okay, when she finally filed for divorce, her attorney was arguing that she couldn't possibly get a better job, that she could only get a minimum wage job because she'd been out of the workforce for so long. And if she's making minimum wage, that entitles her to the maximum amount of alimony possible. Okay. So just be warned that if this is what you're choosing to attempt, I hope it works out for you, but statistics are not on your side here. She's probably going to file for divorce at some point and go after you for the maximum amount of alimony. Okay. But that goes into career gap. Okay. So the longer she hasn't worked, the stronger her rehabilitative support case usually is, right? So this is what they're gonna argue when they file for divorce. By the way, what's a reason why you would want a stay-at-home mom or stay-at-home wife? Like, what is this? If this is something that you want, drop in the comments. Let me know why this is something you still want in this day and age. If this is not something you want, let us know too. Okay. Just drop it in the live chat, or if you're watching the replay, drop a comment below. What are your takes on this? Should men pay all the bills in a long-term relationship? Let's talk about the lifestyle resentment trap. Okay. A lot of times you'll get a stay-at-home mom, and now that she's dealing with the kids all day, which I'm going to be honest, dealing with like small children for long periods of time can be challenging. It can be challenging, right? This is why most stay-at-home moms aren't, sitting there entertaining their kids all day. What do? They buy them a tablet, or they plop them in front of Dora the Explorer, and then they drink mimosas with the other early retirees, right? They go and have play dates with the other early retirees, and now they're doing the stay-at-home mom life, right? But a lot of the time she's been with the kids all day. She's stressed out because of dealing with the kids all day, and you're working all day. And because you're not there helping her with the kids, she thinks that you're just living your dream life. You're living your best life. And you're not necessarily, providing her entire lifestyle for her. She starts resenting the hours that you're working, and she doesn't give a crap. She doesn't care how many hours you're putting in. She doesn't care how much money you put in. It's all about how you're making her feel. And if she, sees that you're not at the home all the time, she's going to start taking you for granted, even though you're funding everything, right? Like all the comfort that she has, you're providing this. She's resenting you. She doesn't care. Okay. That often happens, especially if you read She's Made You Weak. Okay. If you read She's Made You Weak, it talks about the betatization process. It's a free ebook, by the way. It's the top link in the description. But she's going to get to a point where she's testing you. You start failing these tests. Then she's going to start making you open up to her and talk about your most vulnerable feelings and whatever. She's going to use that against you. Then she's going to put you to work. This is what you're doing now, by the way, being the sole provider. And then all she has is next is her evolutionary selfishness. She doesn't care about you. She doesn't care about how much work you're putting in. She doesn't care, like you lose your job, right? She's like, oh, when are you getting another job, right? She doesn't care about you. She only cares about her and the kids. And this is where like evolutionary selfishness kicks in and eventually self-determination. And then she dumps you or cheats on you. Okay. That's the process. It's a 5-step process, right? So this often happens when she's totally taking you for granted. And a lot of times these stay-at-home moms don't appreciate that you are providing early retirement for them. Okay. And then you have the dependency risk. Okay. Single earner models create a single point of failure. Your income, illness, layoffs, burnout, all that kind of stuff hit harder when the household has no second engine. Okay. If you don't get your finances in order, like if you don't read my first book and talk about getting your finances totally in order so you don't have to worry about this sort of thing, you're going to feel trapped in shitty jobs that you don't like. If you have a layoff, that's going to add a lot of stress to not just you, but the entire relationship as she's trying to, push you to get another job. And then you're going to feel that pressure of not having the job and not being able to pay bills and all this kind of stuff. If you're the only one bringing in the money and then you got a whole family to take care of, it's a very scary thing. Okay. It's a very scary thing. Now, if she had a job too, and you lost your job, it wouldn't be so scary. Right. But that could be also motivating too, right? If you think about it. I remember when I was still married, I lost my job at one point, the first IT job I ever had. And I was stressed out because we just had a baby too. So we had my daughter in the house, and it was my now ex-wife. And all of a sudden I didn't have work, but I was the sole provider. I was the only one putting food on the table. It was scary. And I also didn't have my finances in order, and I didn't have the nest egg and stuff that I have now. So it was like, I need a job now. I need a job like yesterday. And it forced me to, hit the ground running that weekend. I got my resume up to date, started applying for jobs. I spent that whole next week applying for jobs and setting up phone interviews for the following week. And then I did phone and in-person interviews that following week, and I had a job by the end of the week, and I started that following Monday, right? I was out of work for like 2 weeks. So it was very motivating. So it could be a good thing, but just know that there is that dependency risk there when you're the only one providing. Okay. I'm not saying you should or shouldn't. These are just considerations I'm giving you. By the way, guys, I created a new course. It's 9 modules. It's over 4 hours long, and it's all about passive dread game and keeping attraction going in a long-term relationship. If you are going to be the sole breadwinner in your family, and you're going to want to keep your wife attracted to you in the long term, 1, for mutual benefit, but for 2, so she doesn't divorce your ass and take you for alimony and get the max amount she can because you're the sole breadwinner. Let me play a quick commercial for the new course, and then we'll get back to the topic. She used to watch you, hang on your words, crave your presence. Now, she barely notices when you enter the room. And if she does, it's with eyes full of boredom. You've tried being softer. You've tried being sweeter. You've tried everything they said would work, and still nothing. The truth no one wants to say out loud, she doesn't miss you because there's nothing to miss. But what if you can make her feel the fear of losing you without saying a word? This isn't manipulation. It's psychological contrast. It's healthy anxiety. It's passive dread. Rebuild tension, reignite her curiosity, make her jealous of the life you're living without her at the center. You don't chase desire. You become the man it fears losing. October 3rd. Don't wait for her to act different. Take action for yourself. Guys, if you want to be notified when that course drops, I've been posting a lot about it lately on social media. Grab the free ebooks, the top link in the description. She's Made You Weak. I also dropped it in the chat there. That way you get notified as soon as it drops this Friday so you don't miss it, okay? All right. You also have to understand, guys, that paying bills does not immediately equal respect. A lot of guys think that. They think, how dare she challenge me? How dare she question what I do? It's my money I'm bringing in. You know how I know guys think that way? Because I used to think that way, right? Like my ex-wife would be such an epic biatch sometimes. And I'm like, how dare she? Like I'm providing all this stuff. Women don't care about any of that stuff. She doesn't necessarily respect you just because you're providing her lifestyle. In fact, most guys get taken for granted, okay? In fact, a lot of guys are doing that sort of thing as a monumental covert contract, okay? What's a covert contract? It means you're doing something, expecting something, okay? So you're saying, yes, I won't let you work. I'm going to let you stay at home so that you can just concentrate on the kids. And then a lot of you guys are doing that, expecting for her to look at you like you're her hero, right? Like you're this great guy that's taking the load of work off her plate because you're such a good man or whatever. And she might think that initially, but eventually she's going to start taking it for granted. And then she's not going to give you the respect that you think that you're owed. And that's going to cause a lot of resentment on your part because you're doing this as a monumental covert contract. Okay, so really consider why you're doing this, is all I'm saying. Now, on the flip side, if she wasn't a stay-at-home mom or wife and she could work, well, then she can also contribute, right? And these modern independent women, they're so modern and independent, they can go get jobs now. We have equality. We have all this equality going around. So why not split the things? Okay. Now, if I were to ever live full time with a woman again, which I highly don't see that happening. I really don't see that happening in the near future. So I'm with Nurse Chick. Nurse Chick's my main squeeze, and she has her own kids. I have my own kids. I'm not interested in doing the Brady Bunch nonsense. I'm not going to do that. So as long as we both have our kids, I can't see us doing that, and she's got a long ways to go before she's going to be without children in her house. Her youngest is still pretty young. She's got a long ways to go. So I don't see that happening in the foreseeable future. But even if that did happen, at the very least, I would make her split the bills. I would say it would be only fair. And the way I would do that sort of thing, is you have separate bank accounts. Okay. You have let's say Nurse Chick and I, lost our minds and decided to get the government involved in our relationship. The way I would do it is I would have separate bank accounts for each of us where our income goes into, and then we would have like one joint account for bills. And I would make sure that we were both contributing to the bill pot. And then all of our bills would be split down the middle. Okay. That's how I would handle it. But man, I was talking with Dr. Robert Glover about this. Okay. Dr. Robert Glover was on the podcast years ago, and I was telling him, one of the biggest contentions in my marriage was bills. You know, it was money, and like, you know, and I was the sole breadwinner. So whenever she would question me about what the money I was spending, I would get really defensive about it. You know, like I'm the only one bringing in money. Fuck off. This is my money. But women don't look at it that way. They look at it like, this is our money. You know, this is ours, right? So you have to be able to set those boundaries and be willing, you know, be willing to have her walk away if that's not what she wants. Okay. Yeah. You know, but I would much rather do that. But anyway, going back to Dr. Robert Glover, I had him on the show and I said, this is how I foresee successful relationship going when it comes to money. And I explained to him my separate bills thing. And he goes, honestly, you're going to have some other problem in your relationship. You know, he's like, you've got the bills thing settled, you know, squashed. You've got a plan for that. Something else is going to come up that you're not planned for. And that's how relationships always end up. Right. So there's no perfect way of doing this. Right. By the way, guys, if you get value out of any of these episodes, do consider sending a super chat. I got demonetized recently on Facebook. I'm demonetized until pretty much the end of October. So if you're getting value out of these, please consider sending a super chat. Okay. That helps support the show probably more than anything else. And besides, even if she's working, she's going to have some skin in the game, isn't she? Right? When you both are investing, you both protect the system. That reduces entitlements and increases respect for time and money. Don't you think? I would think, you know, a lot of people, they don't value free. They don't value free, right? This is why, you know, I do offer some free stuff. Like you can get the free ebook, right? And there's free value there, but most people are going to take the information from the ebook and go, oh, that's interesting information, and never use it or apply it in their lives. Why? Because it's free. They don't value free. Okay. But when people invest a little bit, they now have some skin in the game. Now they value it. It's very much like college. Okay. People value college much more than they value their free, you know, public school education. A lot of times kids just mess around and screw off during public school because it's free, right? They have to be there. They're forced to be there. They don't want to be there. But when you're paying for college out of your own pocket, you sort of are like, I'm going to get as much value out of this as I possibly can because I'm paying for it, right? Well, the same thing happens when your girl is investing money into the relationship. She's paying for it. So she's got a little bit of skin in the game, okay? Whereas if you have the TradCon fairy tale, she doesn't necessarily have skin in the game, so she doesn't care, and she just takes you for granted, okay? Do you see how this might play out? Now, there's different ways that you can manage this too. Okay. You can, let's say you're both contributing. You could run it like a business and run a sort of household profit and loss calculations if you wanted to, right? Pick clear percentages, 50-50, proportional to income, or however you want to do it. Review quarterly, adjust for lifestyle changes, and just manage your budget very anally like that, right? There's a way to make that work. Why not? Okay. By the way, guys, if you want to swap notes with other guys that are going through what you're going through or have been through what you've been through, and you need some advice from like-minded guys and not blue-pilled, you know, average frustrated chumps out there, jump in the wolf pack, would you? In fact, let me ask you, when do you want to start running with the wolves, brother?
Bear Club? Not anymore.
Midlife drift, feeling alone. You don't need hacks, blogs, lies. You need men with fire in their eyes. We rebuild from the ground up. No excuses, no soft stuff. Telegram lit, 24/7. Brothers locked in, steel, not heaven. Step inside the pack. We don't fall, we attack. Truth, fire, presence, we bring it back. Masculine pride, no time to slack. Step inside the
the love of God, somebody too sweet me for that one. Erkin says, nobody says hi or something. Nurse Chick's not there to say hi to everybody. I'm not mad. I'm just disappointed. Nurse Chick, I'm gonna spank that ass. Okay. Jerry, good morning, sir. Erkin says, how is the melody of Wolfpack made? By AI? Yes, by AI. I use what tool did I use for that? Hold on. Suno, I think. Yeah, I think Suno I used. Yeah, so here's the thing about AI music. You don't get copyright strikes on it, right? Like I find, we try to find copyright-free music online so that you don't get copyright dings and demonetized and all this kind of stuff. A lot of times the copyright-free music isn't copyright-free, and you still get copyright dings and stuff like that. But if you generate your own AI music, like you don't get that. It's kind of nice. Kind of nice, My new Dread game course music is I used AI for that too. All right. So we talked about let's see here, household profit and loss. Speaking of being anal with your money, one way that you could do this. See, I'd much rather look at things like what men could or can't do, right? Can or can't do instead of should or shouldn't. One way you could run your household is the way Aaron Clarey does it. Okay. My good man, Aaron Clarey, Captain Capitalism. What he does is he has his house. He's got his house, his bunker up in South Dakota, and he has his girl stay with him, and he charges her rent and utilities. So he actually creates an invoice once a month saying, like, here's your portion of the rent for your time in the house, and here's your cut of the utilities, and he invoices her. And what's really cool about this is, let's say you don't want to get married, you don't want to get the government involved in your relationship, you want to avoid any of those types of traps, because what's interesting is in quite a few states, they have this thing called common law marriage, right? Where if you just live with someone for a certain amount of time, the state just says, yeah, you're married. And now she's entitled to all this crap that in family court, right? She's entitled to alimony and child support if you have kids. Clarey doesn't have any kids, so he doesn't have to worry about that, right? But there's a risk of moving a woman in with you and then living with her for a certain period of time that she could still come after you for some of this kind of crap if she feels scorned, right? She goes and talks to a lawyer, and a lawyer tells her all the cash and prizes she's entitled to. So a way to avoid that is, one, don't get married, and then two, charge her rent and then keep a record of it, right? So that's one thing. That's what Clarey's doing. So if his girl ever decides to be an obnoxious bitch, which I've met her, I can't see that, but you can never fully know a woman until you're sitting across from her in family court. If she decided to do that one day, all he has to do is pull out all the invoices and be like, no, I charged her rent. She's not my common law wife. She was a tenant, right? She's a tenant. So that's a good way of doing that. And that's smart legally, right? Because if she never pays into the ownership, right? Like if she's not paying into the community pot, and then you're using the community pot to pay off a house, even if like it's your name on the house, she can argue that she paid for half of it. And then the court would probably be like, well, if it, in a fair and equitable state like Colorado, they would be like, well, it's fair and equitable that she gets half of that, right? That's how that is. If you live in a community property state, she immediately gets half. Doesn't matter if your name's on it or not. But if you charge her rent, she's not paying into the ownership. She's paying you rent, right? It's far harder to argue ownership in a court down the road. It's very smart, in my opinion. But consult your attorney. This is not legal advice, okay? All right. Let's see here. Guys, by the way, follow me on where is everything now? Follow me on social media. The link's in the description there. I'm on all the good platforms, okay? You got to understand that you don't have to get the government involved if you want to have this kind of dynamic with women. Okay. In fact, I recommend that you don't, because a marriage license is really a one-sided government contract. It's a one-sided government contract that forget marriage. If you were two businesses getting together and you had a contract written like a marriage contract is written, or like a marriage license is written, neither company would sign it. Your lawyers wouldn't allow you to sign it because it's too onerous on the one side, right? It's going back to James Sexton. He was talking about, I saw a clip of him talking about this. He was like, okay, when you do your marriage vows, okay, when you do your marriage vows and the man's like, I promise to, protect and provide and, all this kind of stuff, that's enforceable by the state. And then she's like, okay, well, I'm going to have sex with you and I'm going to love you and I'm going to honor you and I'm going to, obey you and all this kind of stuff. None of that's enforceable by the state. So it's super onerous on the guy. And women, their hypergamous nature, they want to marry up, right? They want to date and marry up. So very rarely does a woman make more than you. And the way that these laws are written, they're not necessarily written like against men, but because of the way things usually play out because of women's hypergamous nature, men tend to date and marry down economically, and women tend to date and marry up economically. And so women get all the cash and prizes a vast majority of the time. And every once in a while, I'll get women in the comments going, well, I had to pay my husband alimony. You're the exception to the rule, sweetheart. Okay. Nurse Chick's the same way. Nurse Chick had to pay her ex-husband a bunch of alimony and stuff too, right? Exceptions to the rule. A vast majority of guys are getting screwed into this kind of stuff because of the marriage contract. So I often propose online, don't get the government involved in your relationships, right? There's lots of different ways that you can still structure your relationship to where she gets a lot of the legal benefits. You know what I mean? Like you can have her as a beneficiary on your insurance. There's all these different things you could do. You can set up trusts. You can set up all sorts of different other like legal vehicles that really take the onerousness off of the relationship that a marriage contract puts on it, right? So there's lots. I talk about that in my first book, Everything I Wish I Knew When I Was 18. There's other ways to handle your relationships than getting Uncle Sam involved. Now, when I say that kind of stuff on social media, a lot of the TradCon kind of dudes are like, I had a guy yesterday going, this is nonsense, right? Because I said, you don't have to be married to have children. This is complete nonsense. Your kids have rights too. And I said, the kids have a right for mom and dad to have to get the government involved in the relationship. I don't think so. I don't think that's a written right for a child to have their parents, in this legal nonsense contract. Okay. That's not true. It's fundamentally not true. And he's like, well, your kids, they need to have mom and dad in the house and you need to man up and stuff like that. So all these guys are basically, when people tell you to man up like that, that's like, it's all to the benefit of women. It has to zero benefit of the man. Right. And two, who says you're not manning up just because you're not getting the government involved in your relationship? Like, that's just a dumb argument. Okay. It's a dumb argument. It's not smart to get into this kind of contract. It's not. Right. I would highly recommend, if you do want to have a life partner, I don't like using the term partner, but if you want to have a girlfriend for life and you guys decide that you're going to be monogamous, you're going to be together, and this is going to be a long-term relationship, that could just be between you guys. Okay. And then legal structure speaking, like there's lots of other vehicles you could do. I would recommend doing anything else besides getting a marriage contract. It's dumb. If you guys have kids together, you guys can, it's, the child's name and stuff like that. That's all dependent on the birth certificate. It has nothing to do with the marriage contract, right? So you can still have children using your name and all this kind of stuff. It's just like, you guys have to agree upon this stuff, and you can do that without getting Uncle Sam involved. Because once you get Uncle Sam involved in your relationship, Uncle Sam gets to decide how you break up. Okay. It's just not smart. So going back to what else you could do, right? You can replicate practical benefits with wills, medical, financial, You can make them beneficiaries. You can, set up trusts. You can do all that kind of stuff without getting the government involved in your relationship. All right. You're like, don't you help guys save their marriages and stuff like that? Yeah. Because there's a lot of guys that didn't get the memo on this stuff. A lot of guys are very marriage focused, marriage conscious, marriage, they're brought up in, religious households. They've got these values that they've been raised with. So they think I have to get married. I was that guy. I was running for that white picket fence, and I got married at 20 years old before I was even old enough to buy alcohol. It was dumb. I didn't know anything. I didn't know what I was doing at that time. Okay. And most kids don't in their early 20s. It's just a dumb thing to do. So I've been through that. I'm speaking from experience here. Okay. But there's a lot of guys that didn't get the memo. They went ahead and pulled that trigger, and now they're in it. Okay. Now they're in their marriage. There's no reason not to try to fix that relationship. Okay. Because it's way more expensive to go through the ringer, after the fact. Okay. So you might as well try to at least attempt to fix it before throwing in the towel. And I always see guys online when I do videos talking about my book, Get Her to Fuck You Again. When I talk about that book, a lot of guys are like, well, the key here is to never get married. That's wonderful advice for someone who hasn't gotten married yet. That's terrible advice for someone who's already married. What's your advice for someone who's already married? Oh, just dump her, bro. Just go through the divorce system and suck it up. Like, no, let's try to fix it. Let's try to fix it. And then once you do all the stuff I talk about in this book, you're either going to turn this around or you're going to be in a much better position in your next relationship. Okay. But just dump her, bro, is not good advice, because if you don't work on yourself, you're going to have the same problems down the road. Okay. By the way, if you guys want help fixing your relationship, book a call with me. Go to call.fixdeadbedrooms.com. Okay. No matter what you decide to do, right? Because the topic today is, should men pay all the bills in a long-term relationship? You need to know your jurisdiction. Okay. You need to know what state you live in. Because like I said before, some states are community property states. Some are equitable distribution. Some states have common law recognition, and all those types of things will impact what happens when you break up. Okay. When I wrote Everything I Wish I Knew when I was 18, at that time, there was only 2 states that were both non-community property states, and they had a default 50-50 assumption for the children. And that was Florida and Kentucky. It might be different now. Check with your attorney. But when I wrote that book a couple of years ago, those were the 2 states where if I was going to start over and have kids, which I got a vasectomy, that's not happening. But if I was going to start over and decide I was going to have kids, I would be like, we have to move to Florida or Kentucky, and we would move there, and then we would probably do the live-in girlfriend thing and do all these other legal vehicles to protect the kids and all that kind of stuff. But I wouldn't get married. I still wouldn't get married, right? But I would only do it in those states because they don't recognize common law. So I don't have to worry about her coming after me for alimony, and default 50-50. So when we break up, like I get my kids half the time. I don't have to sit there and make a big court case and spend a shitload of money and all this kind of crap like I had to do when I went through my divorce. Okay. So know your jurisdiction. And then also you have to understand this too. If you're going to get married, if you're going to get the government involved in your relationship, I highly recommend you get a prenuptial agreement. I don't care how old you are. I don't care if you work at McDonald's right now. You need to get a prenuptial agreement. Okay. Now, some people argue that those get thrown out all the time. James Sexton says that's not true. I had one of my 3% brothers. He was on the podcast a couple of times. Matt Sandifer. He's an attorney down in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, and he was doing family court or family law for a while. But he got sick of it. The last time he was on the podcast, he was like, yeah, I couldn't stand it, dude. I couldn't stomach it. Just dealing with all the crap in the family court system and like the sicko parents and all this kind of stuff. He's like, it was such a disgusting job. I went and got into contract law. I think that's what he's doing now, but I don't blame him. It's a dirty business, right? But even he was saying that with a prenuptial agreement, the only time things get thrown out is if usually if there's a problem with procedure, if the contract wasn't written right, if you on the wedding day forced her to sign the prenup, or you weren't going to go out and in front of her family, that then she could argue duress and all this kind of stuff. They usually throw out line items, not full entire prenups is often also what he was telling me too. But James Sexton says, if you go and get a prenup done on LegalZoom, right, and try to go cheap on it, it's probably going to get thrown out, right? But if you have, a reputable attorney write it up, he's like, they're pretty ironclad. And make sure she has her own attorney too. If you ever read the book, The Tactical Guide to Women, that's what they recommend, is make sure that you both have representation. Because if she has representation and you have representation, separate representation, different law firms, then she can't argue, coercion or collusion or whatever, and it's less likely to get thrown out. But here's the reason why I say it doesn't matter how old you are, it doesn't matter how much money you make, you need a prenup, is because women can smell potential like sharks smell blood. Okay. So she's not going to leave you now when you have nothing. She's going to leave you in 10, 15, 20 years after you've built something. That's when she's going to leave you. So like my, blue-pilled pie in the sky mindset when I got married at 20 years old was, well, I don't have anything right now. She can't possibly take anything from me. But when she finally filed for divorce, I was making over six figures, or I was making six figures in IT. And I had to pay her $100,000 over a period of 5 years just in alimony. The child support's still going. I'm still paying her child support. I pay her like $1,000 a month in child support, right? Like she's going to take you for everything. Now, here's the thing. Prenup won't prevent child support. There's nothing that will prevent child support. The state will ensure that you're paying for your children, right? So prenups and, whether you're married or not, doesn't matter. You're not getting out child support. You're not. So there's nothing with that. But when it comes to not paying that bitch alimony, get a prenup. And oftentimes too, prenups, they protect your assets going into the marriage, but anything that you've built while you're married, she's entitled to half. Isn't that wonderful? So the only way to prevent that sort of thing is by having everything go into a separate entity, like a trust. There's different things to do that. Again, this isn't legal advice. Talk to your attorney. Okay. Going back to what guys say too about just don't get married though. If let's say, the guy who asked about should men pay all the bills in a long-term relationship, let's say that you do want to be the major breadwinner. You don't want her to work. You want to stay at home, traditional type wife or whatever. I recommend during the dating process that you come up with a contenders list. I talk about it frequently, but in my first book, Everything I Wish I Knew When I Was 18, I have what I talk about what's called a contenders list, right? And this is where you're filtering on the dating circuit for what you will or will not tolerate in a relationship. Most guys are out there sniper dating. They take the first girl that's nice to them because they hate dating, right? They don't date with intention. And if you date more intentionally and you're looking for a woman that checks your must-have list, okay, you're going to be more likely to find a solid woman that would be a decent stay-at-home wife, stay-at-home mom, okay? If that's what you want. Again, like going back to the beginning of the episode, should or shouldn't you do that? This is about you. What do you want? Okay. There's risks involved here, but if you know that and you're willing to accept that, then by all means, okay, do whatever you need to do whatever you think is best for you. But I would highly recommend that as you're dating, you do the contenders list and you watch for red flags. Any woman that doesn't check your 5 must-haves is not a contender. She's just a plate. Okay. If she has any deal breakers, you dump her right there. This will keep you out of relationships you should have never been in the first place. And it will allow the cream to really rise to the top. Okay. And that's a pretty simple list, right? You have to be, it's law. The list is law. Okay. You have your 5 must-haves. You have your 5, deal breakers, and that is law. And you go through the dating circuit checking to see if they fit in these boxes. A lot of guys too, when they do the contenders list, they try to force a woman into their list, right? That doesn't necessarily fit there. That's not what it's for. It's to test to see if she already fits these items. And if she doesn't, she's not a contender. That's just how it is. Okay. You have to be your own judge of your life, though. Okay. This is why, going back to the beginning, I'm not going to tell you what you should or shouldn't do. Should men pay all the bills in a long-term relationship? Be your own judge. Okay. The fastest way to kill manipulation is to decide for yourself what you want and what you'll accept. Okay. Should language is a common manipulation frame. Spot it and reset it to wants or have tos. Okay. And I highly recommend you guys read that book too. When I Say No, I Feel Guilty, it'll blow your mind. It'll absolutely blow your mind. Okay. Should you get married? It's up to you. Okay. But if someone tells me I should get married, I'm going to tell them they should pound sand. Okay. You have a prime assertive right. Okay. You have a right to be the final judge of yourself. Build your household rules from this works for me, this doesn't, instead of you should or shouldn't. Okay. That's how adults build durable agreements. And this is you being your own mental point of origin, which is a big talking point in the red pill space. Be your own mental point of origin. Don't let people tell you what you should or shouldn't do. Okay. Now, like I said, it's important to know what the risks and consequences are before making your decision. But at the end of the day, you've got to decide if this is a value that you want and this is a thing that you must have. That's up to you. Okay. I'm not going to tell you what to do or what not to do. I know what I'm going to do and what I'm not going to do, though. Oh, man. All right. That's all I got for this episode here. Let's see. Erkin says, wow, he kicked the Uncle Sam out. Well done, Cappy. What? Oh, yeah. Yeah, Cappy's a genius when it comes to this stuff. If you ever read his book, The Book of Numbers, it's like the MGTOW Bible. You know, Clary is like the king of MGTOW. You know, he wrote this book, and it's a great book. And it's all about the return on investment in the pursuit of women. And his thesis is basically you'll never get back the amount of effort and money it takes to attract women. You'll never recoup that benefit. Okay. Like I sort of look at, having good relationships with women with lots of sex and going out and doing fun stuff with them because I enjoy their company. It's its own benefit. It's its own reward, but I understand some of these risks. And so I am not going to put myself in those positions anymore. Right. I've been through it. I've been through the ringer. You can't tell me it's a good idea. You can't tell me it's a good idea. And it's funny because this one guy on X was saying to me, he's like, well, what don't you have a daughter or anything or something like that? What do you tell your daughter when it comes to not get married? I go, oh, I tell my daughter something completely different. I tell my daughter, oh yeah, please get married. By all means, get married. Because why? Because it benefits her. She's my daughter. Like whatever benefits her, awesome. Massive benefit for her to get married. Okay. My son, however, I'm like, don't do it. Don't do it. There's no benefit. You can have kids, you can do all this stuff without getting the government involved in your relationship. I go, if you are going to do it, wait until you're at least established in your career. When you're like 30 years old, don't be doing it like me in your 20s when you don't know shit from Shinola about life yet. Wait until you're a little bit more established, then do that. But even then, it's not a good idea. That's what I tell my son. 2 different things of advice. And this guy says, well, if you're telling guys not to get married, but you're telling girls to get married, who's going to marry the girls? And to that, I say, there's always going to be some dipshit that thinks that marriage is the only way. And girls are going to get there. So I'm not worried about those girls. Okay. Some dude's going to marry those chicks. That's not my problem. Right. I'm just trying to protect my son myself and, you know, my clients and stuff like that. But you guys are going to do what you're going to do anyway. All right, guys, that's all I have for this episode. Tune into the podcast on Wednesday. I recently tweeted about why you don't really want to know about your girl's past. And one of the Wolfpack brothers asked me to do a stream about it. So we're going to talk about body counts, but we're going to talk about it from the angle of why obsessing over her body count will mentally destroy you. It's a terrible idea. Okay. So we'll talk about it then. But that's all I got. I don't see any super chats. So guys, do be sure to like, subscribe, hit those notifications. I have new episodes every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. I do have a sponsor video for tomorrow. I'll see you guys for that one. Other than that, we'll see you guys on Wednesday.
This has been the Come On Man podcast. Now, go out and get it.